This is the Straight Up Breakdown Podcast.
Exclusively on the Herd Out Media Network.
Tell it to me straight up.
Hello, and welcome to the Straight Up Breakdown Podcast, proudly part of the Hail Varsity Network. I am Greg Smith, we're really only a couple of weeks from the traditional signing day. So things are ramping back up, I guess is the way that I should describe that, though it feels like they never slow down. Today, I am joined by Hail Varsity staff writer Steve Marik. Steve, how are you, man?
Hey, Greg, I'm doing great.
Good. So we got, it is an interesting time, though. We won't get into this too much, but it does feel like I'm half joking, really not, when I say that it doesn't really end with football in general, but Nebraska football for sure. As you know, they had a junior day this past weekend. They'll have another one this coming weekend. And then, we'll get into finishing up the 22 cycle, which feels like, it's ending. But it feels like it has been so much about the transfers and all of that there's just been so much going on, but not as much of it is actually related to 2022 recruits.
Yeah, I think I messaged you when you came out with the info for those 2023 junior day visitors that Nebraska was going to have. And I thought to myself, like, wow, it actually is a 24/7 every single month of the year matters for a college football program. So it's just, with my first year covering the program here, it's opening my eyes to like how much goes into this that I didn't know before.
Yeah, there's just a ton. Like it is interesting because of how it has to be this way now because of recruiting, because you essentially are in a situation where even like there used to be, and it's not really that long ago, where there's a nice little split between when you really actually turn the page to the next recruiting class. But now that doesn't really exist because, it really has ramped up recently. But those 2023 guys have been visiting campuses, well, what would have been multiple years, but not because of COVID. But last year, they were all on campuses. So it's just interesting on how it all kind of rolls together. It definitely makes the people that run those departments, it makes their jobs a lot more difficult because it is a continuous. I'd love to actually just go in there one day. They'll never let us, but go in one day and just see like what the matrix board actually looks like of how they keep track of like multiple years at once. It's fascinating to me.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm just picturing like something out of a movie where you would walk into the room and he's got a name and it's got a circle, but then it has like a bunch of lines coming down with other names on it. And there's like X's and like names X'd out and other names circled with a star by it or something.
Right.
I don't know. That's what I picture. It's probably unrealistic, but it's probably all digital, like on a computer. But whatever.
Probably.
I'll stick to whatever I want to think here.
Yeah, like you picture in your mind, like remember, I think it was Varsity Blues, where at the end they like have the names on the board and they move them, and then they just go. Actually, no, that was Friday Night Lights. It was in Friday Night Lights where they moved them at the end. It was Booby and the boys, like, and then they take the names off the little magnetic strip. Like that is what I'm hoping that it is. I'm sure it's digital.
Yes,
but that's fine though. That's fine. We'll let our dreams live on. Now, each week we have a couple of mainstays of the show, and the first one's called Coach Speak, where we go over something that a coach, player, or talking head said, and then we give you the straight up breakdown of what they meant.
Coach Speaks a real talk.
This week, it comes courtesy of the GOAT, the quarterback of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Tom Brady, who had this to say after the Bucs 30-27 loss in the playoffs yesterday. He said, quote, "Truthfully, guys, I'm thinking about this game," said Brady when asked about pending potential retirement. He said, quote, "I'm not even thinking about anything past 5 minutes from now. I haven't put a lot of thought into it. So, we will just take it day by day and kind of see where we are at." And Brady has 1 year left on his deal. And it's kind of been reported that he's going to take some time here, at least a month, to kind of figure out where things are. So, yes, Steve, what do you think that gut reaction from Tom Brady means?
Let's break that down.
Yeah, I think it's just like your standard, I guess, answer to anybody in his position about like coming back. Of course I don't ever think he was ever going to say, yeah, I'm coming back, or no, I'm going to be looking elsewhere, or no, I'm going to retire. He's never going to do that in that setting anyway. So yeah, it was just a professional answer from a professional. And so I don't know. I don't think we're going to get an answer, I guess, anytime soon. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I think this process is going to drag on a little bit. But, he's entering the time of his career where he's already kind of cemented himself as the greatest. I almost called him the goatest, the greatest quarterback to ever live. And, all those Super Bowl championships and everything, and all those wins that he's racked up. He doesn't have to prove anything else. Like he is the best to ever do it. And so, at this stage of his career, I can see him venturing, and he's already done this, venturing into more business, kind of entertainment, being kind of a celebrity. I think that's kind of like where his mind is at right now. Of course, it's like, if he thinks he can go again somewhere. But yeah, I see him as kind of like just on the downward trajectory of his career, and kind of venturing from the football field to off the field and being kind of a celebrity and social media stars, things like that.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because it's funny you brought that up, because if this were 5 years ago and you had said, yeah, Tom Brady might want to, transition into business and just kind of being, Tom Brady and just being a star, I would have been like, okay, that's kind of crazy. But if you really think about it, think about how people have really kind of come around on him in recent years, really specifically during this Tampa time. It felt like he's shown more of his personality. He's actually been really funny on social media. It does make me wonder, is that going to be part of the next phase of his life, or his career, where he wants to just kind of be Tom Brady and have a good time and show that he can let his hair down and just kind of hang out. And the one thing that always is kind of interesting about the actual playing aspect of this for me with Tom Brady is, at some point, he's got to get tired of doing this, right? It's very difficult to be a football player in general, to put your body through that. But then also for him, the very regimented diet, all of the film study, everything it takes to get his body ready, especially at his age. And then knowing, oh yeah, I've got guys now, they're on his team, or guys like Aaron Donald is a good example. That guy is trying to take my head off on every play. It's just at some point, do you wake up and say, I've accomplished everything that I can at this point. There's nothing left for me to really do. I don't feel like doing this anymore. Now, he's very competitive, right? That's always one of those very famous things about him, is that he's kind of got a maniacal level of competitiveness to him. But that runs out for everyone at some point. And I'm really interested to see, is this the line? Because it feels like more than ever, we could be entering hey, we're going to get a press release or some sort of video from him saying that he's gone ahead and retired. But I'm with you. I wouldn't have expected him to announce that in this press conference.
Yeah, absolutely. And you bring up a good point about him being the ultimate competitor, because he is. And I think, he's just going to take everything into account, his age, the level of athlete that is coming after him. Like he said with Aaron Donald, these guys are being engineered to be athletic, football freaks from day one now, which is just different than what the league has seen, or football has seen. I think just the level of play is the level of athlete is kind of the best that it's ever been at. It's not to take a shot at older generations, but it's just, I think that players are being bred to play in the NFL and be football players from day one nowadays. But yeah, if he could take that competitiveness that he's always had and always will have, and just transition it to maybe the business world or whatever he's trying to do. If he ever wants to do TV or anything like that, which I don't, think is a stretch. No. I think he's going to try to be the best at whatever he ends up doing post football. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting to watch. And I'm with you. I do think he's funny. Actually, he has a cool humor. I think maybe some of that was suppressed in New England. I know he did stuff, once he was established, and it's wow, Tom Brady with the Patriots. But now with Tampa, it seems like, he's all over on commercials, social media has really popped off. So yeah, it's just going to be interesting to see where he takes his career and if he wants to keep playing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that one of the things too is, and I think that, I don't know if you're like this, but I've been definitely guilty of thinking this as we get to so we're, once Peyton Manning retired, and then we're into like this Tom Brady kind of Aaron Rodgers group, a couple others where Russell Wilson is kind of in that. He's a little bit younger than those guys, but he's in that kind of already very established quarterback hierarchy. Because I'm like, man, I'm starting to get a little bummed out, because I'm like, man, these guys are like the titans of quarterbacking in the NFL. And like, they're starting to get older and longer in the tooth. And I don't know if it's going to quite be the same. And then we see stuff like we saw this weekend, right? Where you see, so like the level of quarterback play in some various places is just so good, especially kind of, we saw it kind of culminated in that game that I don't think is the last time we're going to see those two quarterbacks face off, in that game last night with Kansas City and Buffalo, with Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. Like, you've just got and then you have other guys like Lamar Jackson that are just so good right now around the league. Joe Burrow is another one that we'll see this coming weekend get to play. Like, it's just really interesting and good, I think, that you're starting to see that next level of quarterback kind of come along. And I think the NFL is in a better spot than I think people thought it was going to be, maybe even a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, the level of quarterbacking right now is insane. Like, what Josh Allen was doing was complete video game stuff. I mean, Patrick Mahomes too, and even an older guy going with Matthew Stafford, the way he was able to, like, when LA and the Rams are kind of looked like they were fumbling away that game, but then Matt Stafford's like, no, I've been here in this league for a few years. I played big time college football at Georgia. I can go and win this game, and he threw an absolute dime to set up that game winning field goal. So yeah, it's just the quarterbacking is only getting better, in my opinion. And so is the play calling. Like, some of these plays, I'm just like watching and I'm like, man, I want the all 22 film of this. And just like, just to follow where these routes are going and how creative the blocking schemes are and like everything. And I don't know, I would not want to be a defensive coordinator, like in college football or the NFL. Right.
They're definitely not college football. Like, oh my, like because like dual threat quarterbacks can be such a like weapon in college football. Like, good luck with that. But I'm definitely with you. And it's interesting though that you say that, because it was something I was thinking about earlier, which, as we know, guys, y'all that listen to the show, I'm a Bears fan. I have on a 49ers hat right this second, but I'm a Bears fan. And so the Bears are going through this coaching search, right? And I think I said this on the pod a couple of weeks ago. Like, I was not sure whether or not I wanted the Bears to go after an offensive coach or a defensive coach, just because in the Bears' particular circumstance, yes, I understand they have what they hope is a franchise quarterback in Justin Fields, but the city is just such a blue collar, like, defensive led town. Like, people really embrace defense there, so it's just different, right? The wind and the weather play a part of it, so it just makes more sense in Chicago than some other places to have a defensive minded coach. But then I sit back and watch these games from this weekend. And even Buffalo, who had a great defense during the regular season, they're just getting shredded up and down the field by what is a generational quarterback, Patrick Mahomes. Like, let's not, like, excuse me, as we, people downgrade Buffalo's defense, like, hey, listen, they were going up against that dude. Like, it wasn't like some bum that was out there throwing these passes, right? But it just makes me think, like, it's such an offensive league that I almost think now the Bears have to hire an offensive guy. And you don't need to look much further than that Buffalo-Kansas City game. And I think either of the offensive coordinators would work for me. But I think Brian Daboll feels like kind of a lead candidate for the Bears at this point.
Yeah, I was just going to mention Daboll because, that guy, like, wherever he's been, it kind of seems like the good offense has followed him. So, Yeah, he seems like, Eric Bieniemy would be call that guy up soon. Because he's drawing up some amazing stuff. And, that's really how, if you think about it, Zach Taylor got his head coaching gig with Cincinnati. It was because he was the hot shot, young offensive mind that, was at LA with the Rams. I think he was like an offensive coordinator or maybe quarterbacks coach, then got the gig at Cincinnati. But before that, he was doing really great things at Cincinnati as an OC too. So that's really cool for a former Nebraska guy to be doing all of this. And yeah, I think for Chicago, like I see what you mean is like when you like, I guess, go to Chicago, you want to be like prepared for battle because it's going to be crappy weather and there's going to be a tough defense. That's kind of like what I envision, the Chicago Bears being, but it's just like what their tradition is, I guess. But yeah, times are changing. It's an offensive league now. All these just incredibly talented and elite quarterbacks doing crazy things. Instead of focusing on defense, maybe it is the right call just to, try to join the fray and do what everybody else is doing with these, really elite play callers and offensive schemes, I guess.
And I guess part of it, and I think that it goes hand in hand with what we started off talking about the quarterbacks in the league. Joe Burrow was somebody I forgot to mention that around here. Joe occupies a really interesting space here in Nebraska, but we won't get into that. I don't want you guys yelling at me. But like it's just interesting because like it all kind of comes together, right? Where you have these quarterbacks, these young quarterbacks around the league, paired with really good offensive minds and offensive coaches. Yeah. And that makes sense that the Bears should probably try and recreate that in their version of that, because I just don't think that that's going away anytime soon. And part of this is also tied to the rules in the league, right? Like I think that the league understands that, hey, when you have this 42, 36, 38 game between Kansas City and Buffalo, and I haven't seen it. I haven't seen like what the ratings numbers were from that. I'm sure they were astronomical. Like I'm sure the ones for the Rams Bucks game were really high as well. Next week is going to be off the charts too. Like I just think that the league this is exactly what they wanted when it came to those rule changes, and you can't hit quarterbacks and all of that. Like I know there are people out there that love defensive football, but it just doesn't feel like that's the way, not even that it doesn't feel like, it is the way that the NFL designed this to end up happening. And it makes for some really, really exciting football because this weekend, particularly Sunday, was just so awesome. Like it was just a lot of fun to follow.
It kind of reminds me of like a adapt or die type way of thinking. And like, if you want to, survive and continue and win games and have an exciting product, that's offense right now. And that's points and that's yards and that's just excitement. So adapt or die. So yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking with the whole, Chicago's in a tough spot because they have so much history and tradition with that defense, but I don't know. You just got to figure out what the best way to go is for that franchise.
Yeah, but I also kind of wonder, though, too, when they have a good defense right now. So if you were able to bring in an offensive coach to really build that up and maybe capitalize on the back end of kind of the prime of this defense and bring in a good DC, like maybe you could be able to make that work. Like, there's no reason that you couldn't have Justin Fields take a big leap if you got the right offensive mind in there, because as we were mentioning before, like a lot of these quarterbacks that we talked about had a lot of success early on, right? Like it wasn't like it took them 5 years to figure it out. It's just not the way that things work anymore. Speaking of changes to the game, like it was never the case where you would see so many young quarterbacks just lighting things up. But to see that happen all of the time is now even different. And I mean, I make it sound like we're old. We're not. But it's just so interesting to see these quick evolutions in the game that have, to me, made the game a lot more exciting. And so that you get more games like you had this weekend versus what we had in that like super wild card weekend that everybody wants to forget.
Yeah, there were a lot of blowouts, weren't there?
Yeah, the blowouts were it's just interesting. Like I understand why the NFL wanted to have those extra teams in, but boy, it doesn't feel like the juice was worth the squeeze from a viewing standpoint. Revenue standpoint, totally get it, but a viewing standpoint, not so much.
Yeah, and I'm kind of like not on the popular side because I'm such a football fan, a lover of football, that I just want as much of it on my TV as possible. So like if they're gonna like create these wild card games, by all means do it. I'm gonna watch. But like if they turn out to be blowouts, then that's just what it is. So more the merrier for me. It's kind of like the bowl season. A lot of people don't like all the bowls, but hey, if it's me, I'm recording it and I'm watching it sometime this summer if I miss it, actually. So I might have sounded like really weird right there. But
so but you're the smart one because you've now got these bowl games banked for that. There's only a little, we were talking about how it's nonstop. There is only a little bit of a lull in time where it feels like it drags on forever. It's really that time before Big Ten Media Days. And then there's a little bit of a time between Big Ten Media Days and when, for us, especially when fall camp opens up, that little bit of time is all you need to fill. You got yourself a handful of bowl games banked. You'll be good to go with that. I don't know. I think you might be the one that figured it out here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are, I'm a YouTube TV guy. So I have all of the bowl games recorded. Because it was kind of a busy stretch when they were playing all of them in December. But yeah, there are some games that I haven't watched, but I plan on watching in the summer when I guess have some afternoons to myself, hopefully. So
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be good. So now I know how you'll spend your free time once we get some. Now every week we end the show with my favorite segment of the week called "Put Them on Blast," where we put somebody on blast for something that they did or said.
Put them on blast.
Now this time I'm going to go first because it's actually good. It's tied to last week's episode. So you guys remember last week when I had Ellie French on from KETV in Omaha, we got into some different NBA stuff and we talked about the 76ers and kind of their drama with Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid saying we don't need to make a big trade for another star because we're playing well and all of that, which is super interesting. They've continued to play well. He's been awesome, Joel Embiid has. But there was a report just this morning from The Athletic that Daryl Morey, the 76ers president and GM, wants to potentially wait until this summer to trade Ben Simmons because he needs Ben Simmons' contract in a potential blockbuster move for James Harden. Now, the reason that Daryl Morey has to go on blast here is because the very first thing I thought when I saw this report was, why couldn't you have just done that before this season? And now you wouldn't be wasting a year of Joel Embiid's prime. B, you would have not been wasting a year of Ben Simmons, which I guess you guys don't care about because he's wanting to sit out anyway. But also you would have got a jump start on building the next phase of your team, and your team would have been better because I do think that Joel Embiid and James Harden would be a really nice pairing, but you could have done that in the offseason. I just don't understand why it is that you would then try and wait to push for that. And then now that's out there and it's going to make it even more difficult for you to go ahead and make that move. Plus, I'm not a Daryl Morey guy. I think that there's too much made of Daryl Morey being this basketball genius because he figured out spreadsheets, even though he's never won anything. It just drives me nuts with the whole Daryl Morey thing. So for all of that, Daryl Morey has to go on blast.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, I mean, he has to. Why did just make the trade before the season? And we knew that Ben Simmons was going to be hard to move anyway because of the holes in his game. He's a good, people, I think, go too far in saying he's not any good. I think he has value, but he is also not someone I think that you can have be the number one guy on your championship team just because of the limitations with him, and the limitations being him not wanting to shoot. So, Steve, who are you putting on blast?
Yeah, so I don't know if I'm gonna force your listeners to stop listening because they don't care about this, but I'm putting the Hawaii football program on notice here.
Okay,
they have really screwed up. So just a little background on myself. I'm a Hawaii football fan. They are Cole Brennan was the reason why I love college football right now. So just growing up as a high schooler, they were always late on ESPN late night games. So I'd always watch, it seemed every Hawaii game they were throwing for 400, 500 yards every game, throwing all sorts of touchdowns for a young, impressionable kid. That was just the coolest thing ever. So I've kept my fandom of the Hawaii Warriors. But recently they just, it's been awful there. They have no money. They can't find good head coaches, and they just were forced to fire a really bad one in Todd Graham. He only lasted 2 seasons, just a complete fit over there at Hawaii, just did not fit, and not a very well-liked coach in the industry anyway. So they just did hire Timmy Chang who's a former football player and record-setting quarterback over there at Hawaii. And, he's a young guy. I'm really pulling for him, but they really messed up when they couldn't find a deal for June Jones, who is a longtime Hawaii head coach over there, who was willing to come back and help the program out and get it back on its feet. But apparently they couldn't. They couldn't get the contract details down. They were only willing to give him, per reports, like a 2-year deal and not a lot of money. And June Jones is like, well, how am I going to recruit on that? How am I going to get kids to come to Hawaii and play for, 3 to 4 years when they know that I only have a 2-year contract? So I don't know. I'm just putting University of Hawaii administration on blast. Kind of a weird one, but yeah, I'm a Hawaii fan. So that's what I've been thinking about this past week.
That works. That is not the weirdest blast that has been on the show. Old age got put on blast, and it was one of my favorite ones to date.
Old age?
Yeah, shouts to Derek Peterson put old age on blast once because his knees hurt getting out of bed. It was hilarious. It was actually if you missed it, it was a few weeks back, maybe like right around the new year. We did like a best of like my favorite put them on blast, and it was actually in that. So go check that out if you missed that. But no, that definitely works. And I do think that that's a worthy blast, because I think that Hawaii, it's one of those programs that, and I'm with you, I used to watch those games too, but it is a place where it's difficult to get guys, get coaches. And like when you have someone that wants to come help out and wants to, and honestly wants the best for the program and get it back up and running, to turn your back on that is a little strange, given the fact that's the place that they're in. It was just weird. Yeah, it definitely was strange.
Yeah, when that administration made the hire for Todd Graham, I don't know if you know much about Todd Graham, but he's just not a well-liked dude.
I do remember him.
Yeah, there hasn't been a lot of good things said about Todd Graham and his coaching career. But Hawaii just needs to get back to, and they are doing this with the hire of Timmy Chang, who was an assistant wide receivers coach at Nevada, but he recently got the new job coaching receivers at Colorado State. So he's like moving again to the head coach of Hawaii. But they just need to get back to an identity, and the identity of football on the islands is airing it out, throwing every single down. If it's 3rd and 2, don't care. You're throwing the ball. It's just what they're known for. It's what they're good at. It's what the culture is. You just need an exciting brand of football to get people to go to the games and generate revenue and all that fun stuff. So, Hawaii administration, I think they did a good job with getting Timmy Chang in there, but we'll see how it goes from now on.
Yeah, we will be watching that on late night, like past Maction and Pac-12 After Dark. Like that's when you get to the. Then you get
the 7 p.m. kickoff in Honolulu. Let's go!
Right, and then it's like you reset all over again. Oh yeah, I definitely know about that. That's going to do it for us this week. Subscribe to the podcast everywhere you can listen to them. Rate us and leave us a 5-star review. If you only leave a 4-star review, I'm inclined to think you're a hater, and nobody wants that. Make sure that you're checking out the other podcasts on the Hail Varsity Network, the Mind Your Own podcast, Nebraska Preps post-game show, and the Hail Varsity radio show. Also, check out the Hail Varsity YouTube page, back on there with another recruiting question video of the week. You can also find us on Twitter at Greg Smith HB and at Steve_Marik. You can email the show at straightupbreakdown@hailvarsity.com. I will catch y'all next week.
A Huda Media Production.